Josh, thank you so much for joining us today and helping us kick off our fourth Marketing to the LGBTQ plus community. So for those of us, for those tuning in who might not be familiar with the Trevor Project or need a refresher, tell everyone a little bit about the organization's history and its mission.
Yeah, so the Trevor Project is the world's largest suicide prevention and crisis intervention organization for LGBTQ young people. We've been around since 1998 when we started as a phone line that operated 3 hours a day to support LGBTQ young people in need. And today, 23 years later, we are a 24/7, 365 days out of the year service that serves crisis counselors for LGBTQ young people in need. Any time of the day, it's always free, it's always confidential. More equally important, we do a lot of work on the advocacy side, working both in DC as well as in state legislatures to really drive legislation that affirms LGBTQ young people. And in addition to that, we do research, education, and resource building to really name the problem in terms of the public health crisis around suicide among LGBTQ young people in this country, but also serve resources to support, affirm, and help those young people thrive. So yeah, that's it in a nutshell.
Beautifully said. I myself have a sister who's done a lot of volunteer work as a counselor for the Trevor Project. So the cause is also very important to me. So tell me about, and tell me what drew you to the role, because you're a relatively new team member there. You just joined in February in this newly created role of VP of Marketing. So what was your path to the Trevor Project like?
Yeah, so I have always worked in the private sector space. My history is in the publishing industry. I spent 4 years at Vice Media as director of media, and most recently worked at Thrive Global, which is Ariana Huffington's newest venture. But at the end of the day, what piqued my interest so much about the opportunity to come on board at the Trevor Project is to be able to leverage and utilize all the skill set that I've developed throughout my career in private sector marketing about storytelling, driving trust, consideration, authority among audiences, but also, their affinity and loyalty. All those things really go into the pathway of the future for the Trevor Project, because we know that we want to serve more and more LGBTQ young people. We have a goal of serving 1.8 million LGBTQ young people by the end of our 25th fiscal year, which is in 2023. And a big part of doing that is moving those measures of brand interest, brand trust, and brand consideration, so that when a young person is in their time of need, we know that we built the confidence in them to reach out to us and trust us. So all of the expertise that I learned in terms of storytelling and navigating, really deep marketing expertise and data analysis is really crucial to the Trevor Project's ongoing mission and its growth.
Absolutely. Not to get too sobering here, but can you kind of paint a picture for just how much need there is for a service like this? Like, are there any stats that you became aware of as you joined in terms of LGBTQ youth in crisis?
Yeah, and I think it is sobering, but it's important to name it because it starts there. We know that over 40% of LGBTQ young people in the country consider suicide every year, and at least one attempts suicide every 45 seconds. So we know that 23 years since we started, 23 years after the nascent of the Trevor Project, we know that our mission is still crucially important. And that's why we're here today, to not only serve as a crisis support system for those LGBTQ young people in immediate need, but also to do all of the groundwork and everything outside of that to make sure that they're affirmed and thriving. Because we know that even in 2021, we have a long way to go to make sure that every LGBTQ young person here in the United States feels affirmed and can thrive in the communities that they live in. So, yeah.
Well, and the affirmation point is just as crucial as, you know, that first call, right? Tell me, maybe walk me through your customer journey. Like when someone calls for help, what does the relationship with that person look like after that initial interaction?
Yeah, so our services are crisis services. So it's really about de-escalation and making sure that we are really serving that immediate crisis need. Beyond that, it's about resource building, it's about engagement, it's about affirmation. So it's about leveraging social, speaking to LGBTQ young people, providing resources, understanding where we need to double down on certain resources, paying specific regard to the lived experiences under that LGBTQ youth umbrella, delivering impactful messaging that pays specific regard to the Black and Latinx LGBTQ youth experience. So in lockstep with really delivering that crisis support, it's about reaching LGBTQ young people on an always-on perspective and really delivering it and driving the resources and message to affirm them at every touch point we have with them.
Absolutely. So let's talk about the marketing side of your role, because one of the first big remits you underwent when you joined the company was to execute a brand refresh, right, for the Trevor Project logo and kind of brand positioning. Tell me about what that process looked like and what the end result has been so far.
Yeah, so this process far predates me. Over the past 2 years, the organization has done a great deal of research and work in terms of the brand's positioning, but also its look and feel. We really haven't changed the Trevor Project's brand visuals and visual vocabulary since 2011. So we knew it was high time to really recalibrate the brand, optimize it for today's youth cohort. In particular, Gen Z, their perspectives in life, really what engages them. How do we take, the Trevor Project of 2011 and make it something that's resonant in the TikTok era, for instance? So over 2 years, we did a great deal of research, data validation, speaking to LGBTQ young people themselves through focus groups to determine really what the brand's look and feel should be like. Understanding our internal intrinsics, what the brand means to us and what we want the brand to mean to LGBTQ young people. How do we really reposition the brand's look and feel to capture that? So from testing color palettes to logos to the user experience of the website, making sure that it's as frictionless as possible in terms of allowing an LGBTQ young person to reach us when they need help and they need to reach out to a counselor. So we did years of research to really determine what the most appropriate pathway and future for the brand was. And in September of this year, after all of that research, after all of that development and implementation, we successfully launched the Trevor Project's latest brand refresh, which not only is a move forward in terms of just visual freshness, but also a really validated move forward in terms of making sure we are as resonant as possible among LGBTQ young people. So that goes from, how our compass star, which is a big trademark of ours, how that's incorporated into our logo, really what certain colors connote, and changing what was our trademark orange, which was more of a traditional orange color, to what we call a tangerine, all in the aspects of, having data that says that a move away from that old orange positions us as more aspirational and bold. So a lot of things went into that. But we're really, proud of the product and its evolution and just really eager to see it, get out there and grow.
Absolutely. Well, congrats on getting such a a big refresh out the door so quickly. I mean, yeah, you talked about the small, seemingly small significance of things like the positioning of the star. Like maybe to tell our audience quickly about that, because when we spoke yesterday, I thought that was so fascinating about how little details like that mean a lot.
Yeah, really fascinating. And they say that everything's in the details, right? Um, our star has been a trademark of ours since 2011. However, it's been positioned in such a way that it was a part of our word mark. It was facing left. So what we did after validation was we removed the star from our actual word mark, right? So the star had its own real estate within our logo lockup, but we actually positioned the star so that it was directed cardinally towards the right, as a means of connoting progression and forward movement. And this is something that, input that we directly got from those young people that we were able to speak to. So it's very impactful, and it really is those details that make all the difference. And we're grateful for the young people that were able to inform us in terms of making those decisions.
Absolutely. So you mentioned the brand refresh was just unveiled in September. Tell me what that looked like from a marketing mix standpoint. What channels or platforms did you rely on to get the word out about this new positioning?
Yeah, so we did a really heavy press push. For us, the brand relaunch was more about repositioning the Trevor Project as an organization, but not repositioning the Trevor Project as an organization. Let me backtrack, but more reintroducing ourselves, our mission, and also telling the narrative of the why. Why are we changing? All of the stuff that we've detailed, it really is the storyline about the changes. Is we really just sought to position ourselves in a place that would really impact positively our mission. And that means, changing with the generational youth cohorts that we serve. But one thing that's important to note is that we're always in market speaking to LGBTQ young people. We have a bevy of always on messaging, whether it's, crisis services TTA messaging, really directing young people to utilize our services, or, broader brand awareness based messaging. And all of that was imbued with the new brand as soon as we launched. So it was really just a continuance of all the messaging that's been out there, but with the new look and feel and that fresh visual vocabulary. But in terms of really pushing out sort of the narrative of the brand refresh, it was about really telling it from an organizational perspective, I'd say.
Excellent. So press was kind of your channel for something as nuanced as the refresh in September. As far as evergreen marketing, tell me a little bit about what your mix looks like there. How do you, what channels do you guys lean on the most?
Yeah, and this is honestly probably the biggest. This, I call it the proverbial pistachio, because it's always a hard thing to crack. And one of the things that we're currently dealing with and grappling with is a lot of the marketplace changes, from IDFA to Meta's announcement, which is taking place in January, and the fact that our key demographic is our youth. So that 13 to 17 age range does pose additional difficulties in terms of ways we can reach them and target them based on updates to the marketplace and the ecosystems that we use. But generally speaking, we're everywhere. So we're using all of the key social networks and platforms: Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, as well as YouTube, in terms of focusing on LGBTQ young people. But in addition to that, we're equally leveraging Facebook, LinkedIn, as well as some of those other channels as well, to really drive stewardship and to speak to adults that face LGBTQ young people regularly. So we're across the ecosystems. Separately, we're doing SEM and SEO to drive both awareness for our services, but in addition to that, we are, a not-for-profit. So charitable giving is an important factor for us to be able to facilitate and grow what we do. So we do a great deal of SEM in terms of driving charitable giving and community giving. We've done tests across certain sort of direct buys, such as Grindr and Her and other apps that are endemic. But really, the real sort of storyline for us is that we have to pivot. We know that there are a lot of changes to how we can target, and specifically how we can target and reach LGBTQ young people. So as we look forward, we're looking towards more and more contextual alignment. What are the ecosystems where our audiences are endemically consuming, are endemically reading and engaging? And that's where we need to be. So, you know, as we grow, it's more and more going to be about contextual alignment, as we have less and less inferential data points at our disposal to really target LGBTQ young people, from a data perspective, if that makes sense.
It definitely does. And I would imagine a big part of that too comes from your work with ambassadors and influencers. Can you maybe share who some of those talent partners have been to help spread the word and tell that story with the nuance it deserves?
Yeah. And we have so much gratitude, and we're so grateful for the immense amount of support that we have from major talent, influencers, luminaries. We recently were able to honor Lil Nas X as our inaugural National Suicide Prevention Advocate of the Year, which was an immense honor for us, but also for Lil Nas X, who's been just such an important champion for visibility within the LGBTQ youth community, but also just such an advocate for LGBTQ youth mental health, really sharing his struggles, but also his perseverances, and really being a possibility model for so many LGBTQ young people out there, particularly Black and Brown LGBTQ young people that don't have a lot of role models or possibility models, you know, to look up to. And, you know, the reason why he was our inaugural advocate was because of everything that he does, but also his scale. You know, I think it's really important for us to be able to align ourselves with important celebrities that, you know, want to be a surrogate for a message such as Lil Nas X, because that means that very simply we can reach an audience of, you know, he has 40 plus million followers. And we know by virtue of his audiences, who follows his music, who streams him, that audience is going to overlap heavily with who we're trying to reach. So those relationships are just really important. And also, we're always immensely grateful for what talent and people with these big platforms do for us in terms of driving added visibility for our mission, and really helping LGBTQ young people. I think it's just crucially important. But, you know, the other thing that I'd say about talent is that what we find to be very important is to look beyond the celebrities, right? Lil Nas X is such an important luminary for us, and we love everything that he does. But it's also important to, you know, understand which micro influencers, which, you know, people who aren't on the airwaves necessarily or aren't on your television screens, but are still making really major impacts and really engaging with LGBTQ young people. So, you know, for us, it's about talent engagement, large and small, and finding representative talent that can speak with a level of authority to their fans and followers about our mission, and really get them to, you know, reach out to us in their time of need, but also trust us if, you know, that time of need unfortunately comes about.
Yeah, well, first of all, I don't know if you saw the light bulb going off in my head when you called Lil Nas X a possibility model, because that is such a fantastic term for what he represents. We could spend the whole 2 hours of today's live cast talking about all the things Lil Nas X has done culturally, because yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, I think we are all grateful that we have him in our world and zeitgeist, for sure.
Absolutely. Okay, so we've got about 20 minutes left, so I want to make sure I get to some of my additional questions for you, Josh, before I start opening it up to our audience for Q&A. So tell me about your near and long-term goals for the Trevor Project. What does the year ahead look like, and what are maybe some moonshots you have as well?
Yeah, great question. So we have a very well-defined strategic plan, and the cardinal goal for that strategic plan is serving 1.8 million crisis contacts, like I said earlier, by the end of our 23rd fiscal year. Everything that we're doing over the next calendar year is really moving the needle in terms of what I call important, like precursor metrics, such as awareness of our brand generally, but more importantly, consideration of our brand, as well as alignment of the Trevor Project to key intrinsics that we know move the needle for consideration. So that means that not only are we running a full year 4-wave study alongside our partners at Qualtrics to just first have a baseline understanding of where we are and who knows about us and what they think about us, but also to action upon that. So we're hiring a head of content and shortly thereafter standing up a content team to really build a content engine for us to create more resources, but also attend to some of the barriers that we know prevent individuals from using our services. We have these data points now to understand where we have room for improvement. So it's all about dispelling beliefs about, for instance, give you an example, we know from our data that one of the key barriers is that many LGBTQ young people feel that their problems aren't significant or severe enough to warrant our services. And that's not how we see our services. So a big mission for us is leveraging that data point, right, and reacting to it and dispelling that belief among LGBTQ young people, all in an effort at the end of the day to hit that 1.8 million goal, because we know that we have to move the needle in terms of all of those metrics to really garner that confidence for them to use our services. So over the next year, it's baselining our mainline marketing metrics, but also doing a lot to significantly improve them. And ultimately, by way of that, deliver those increases that we need to hit that strategic goal. Yeah.
Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about, the importance of language and how you talk to the LGBTQ plus community, because as you mentioned, Gen Z is really teaching us all a lot about, the ways they like to be addressed, the importance of pronouns and all those other details in terms of language. So what are some best practices you would share as far as how to connect authentically with LGBTQ plus consumers? Any do's and don'ts in terms of safe messaging and how to, address all types of identities on the spectrum?
Yeah, I mean, I think firstly, it's right there, Andrew, in what you said, that the LGBTQ umbrella is multifarious. So really understanding that. And, in terms of brand marketing, being able to deliver visibility for for multiple for all of those elements that comprise the LGBTQ umbrella, and I think that means delivering more visibility to Black and Brown LGBTQ young people, trans and non-binary folk, and really centering the voice, the message on them. I think that means being very affirmative, but also passing the mic. One of the things that we absolutely, we champion and seek to do more of is really giving LGBTQ young people themselves the opportunity to engage with us and really speak to their lived experiences. And I think that's what's so crucially important. So in terms of safe messaging, like literal, tactical, like what copy to use, what copy not to use, there are some guidelines, but I would say generally speaking, stay away from terms that can seem stigmatizing. A lot of terms that we use in everyday parlance, can be stigmatizing, such as the term, just saying like, oh, that was crazy, can connote something negative to somebody and harm an individual. So it's really just being really mindful of the word choice that you use, and the messaging that you convey, and also just being really authentic. And that means, like, as a brand, from the conception to the deployment and production, like making sure that people who are representative of the identities that you're depicting are part and parcel of that process, from the first meeting at the table, to the DP, to the individuals who are subjects of the film or the asset. Just being really intentional and making sure that inclusivity is not only in the end product, but through and through the entire conception of a campaign, and creative pursuit.
Absolutely. I'm going to quickly put myself on blast as far as inclusive language, because I am still trying to deprogram the use of the word "you guys," which I think I maybe used at one point on this panel, but and just little things like that also certainly.
You guys,
yeah.
And I think, and I think it's all about, I think in a personal sense, it's all about giving yourself empathy. DEI is a forever journey, but I think in terms of marketing, it's really crucial to get it right the first time, because as marketers, we all know that you only get so many chances. So it's really about making sure that you're affirming those LGBTQ young people you're speaking to up front.
Absolutely. I know this isn't directly part of your remit, but I know the Trevor Project has a substantial, team that works with brands to help with some of that guidance. Can you speak briefly to how the team works with companies to make sure that they're, being inclusive in their messaging?
Yeah. And this isn't, like you said, isn't fully part of my remit. So I'll keep it brief and top level, but we work with a variety of different corporate partners to help amplify our mission, and really, drive visibility for what we do. And we're really grateful for that. And that comes in a multitude of different ways, from, social amplification campaigns to employee engagement, where, we work with a corporate partner's employee to share DEI principles and curricula, in terms of cultural competencies around LGBTQ lived experiences, product partnerships and stuff like that. I even was able to be featured alongside some of my colleagues in an Abercrombie and Fitch campaign for Pride on Instagram. So just really grateful for the partners that we have that support us and really do drive forward our mission and give us such significant added visibility for what we do.
Absolutely. Okay, so I'm going to open up the Q&A and invite all of our attendees who are watching us on Zoom to ask any questions you may have on the Q&A widget on the bottom right-hand side. In the meantime, while we get some questions added, Josh, I want to talk real quick about as far as the other side of changes to how to address and identify consumers that have come up with this year in terms of marketplace changes with regards to cookies and online privacy, and even what Facebook and Meta have introduced. Can you tell me a little bit about how you're bracing for some of that change as it relates to, online campaigns?
Yeah, so part of it, like I mentioned earlier, is really contextual alignment. I think it's focusing. I think our strategy over the next year is going to not dispense with social. That I don't think that we could ever really do that. I think that's something that is a big decision and a big lever to pull for any marketer, but also focusing more on direct buys. What are the endemic spaces where we can reach LGBTQ young people without needing a great deal of data targeting, without needing to rely on algorithms? I think that's really going to be an important pathway for us. Secondarily, really where our focus is at is just first party data. You know, I've heard from, you know, friends and colleagues who work in the private sector space who are dealing with a lot of challenges, even with, you know, a huge data lake of first party data. I have friends in e-com and stuff like that. But, you know, as a not-for-profit, we're at a place where we're just beginning to really build that robust marketing stack. So I think part of, you know, another part of our strategies is how do we really collect and leverage first party data? How do we really sort of lean on ourselves to understand and capture our audiences rather than the platforms themselves? Because that is, from my vantage point, largely gonna fall by the wayside, at least, you know, in terms of our use case, which is really, you know, at every step, reaching LGBTQ young people primarily. So it's just, you know, it's definitely an existential sort of moment, but one that, you know, we're really prepared for. And I think that anybody who's, you know, worked in marketing long enough and has dealt with Facebook long enough knows that this is more cyclical than anything. So, you know, we're going back into the war room and figuring out what's next for us.
Excellent. Tell me a little bit more about your kind of guiding principles as a marketer. You mentioned prior to joining Trevor Project early this year, you've spent time on the publisher and private sector side. So what's been the connecting thread that you take from each role? Like what are your kind of brand pillars as Josh Weaver?
Yeah. So, you know, gratefully, a lot of my time in the publishing side was spent at, you know, youth-oriented or like publications such as Vice, where I was able to understand the value of storytelling and authenticity as it pertains to speaking to and garnering the trust of young people. Young people in particularly, you know, my generation, starting with my generation, millennials, but particularly with Gen Z, they're very astute, very easy to pick up on, you know, what today we would call virtue signaling or disingenuity. So I think that authenticity at the end of the day stands at the top of any, you know, marketing principle or pillar or tenet that I have, because it's really what is the most efficacious principle in terms of garnering trust, which is what we need. In terms of getting LGBTQ young people to reach out to us. I would say beyond that, you know, the only other principle I have is like brand trust. Marketing doesn't come from the mind of one. And oftentimes it doesn't come from the minds of only marketers. So, you know, at the Trevor Project, we have a lot of open discourse, brainstorming, reaching across the aisle to figure out, you know, what we want to do, but also having input from others, I think is really important, and understanding that all things marketing is iterative, and there's never sort of a perfect place. That goalpost is always moving.
Absolutely. Okay, we have a couple great questions already coming in the Q&A. So the first one is half a comment, which is to say, I just want to say I love the Trevor Project's latest comics, and I've seen them shared so much.
Yeah.
Their question is, what's the biggest or most seen mistake that most brands make when it comes to engaging LGBTQ plus consumers?
That's a great question. And I don't know if I have like a specific answer. Like I can't call out one as being like, I can't call out a cardinal mistake rather. But I do think, going back to the top of the conversation before you introduced me, Andrew, where, you know, you really pinpointed the import of having these dialogues, talking to LGBTQ young people as brands throughout the year, and really focusing LGBTQ young people or LGBTQ people in general. You know, young people, that's our primary audience, but LGBTQ people, thinking of LGBTQ people as a significant audience pillar that deserves activation and engagement throughout the year, and not simply during key tentpoles. I think that that's probably the most one of the more consequential mistakes that, a typical brand would make in terms of engaging LGBTQ people. And I think what's more is that when you're engaging LGBTQ people year round, you get more of that share of voice, right? Because during Pride, the share of voice is so minimal and so convoluted with everybody that, maybe save that most impactful message for another time, But Pride is still a moment for celebration. I don't think that Pride is a bad time to activate whatsoever. But I think that it's a yes and in terms of Pride.
I was just going to say, Pride and, not Pride only or Pride or, for sure. Yeah, the fact that we're, it's the holiday season, and I already see so many commercials inclusive of LGBTQ plus couples and relationships. That's certainly a sign of positive progress as well.
Totally.
To answer this audience member's other question, yes, this will be archived on YouTube. So please go to visit Brand Innovators YouTube after this recording if you'd like to catch up on any panels you may have missed or rewatch any sessions as well. We have time for one more question if anyone wants to pop in the Q&A. But in the meantime, Josh, I'll ask you what I hope to hear from all of our panelists today, which is there an example of a LGBTQ inclusive campaign from a brand other than your own that you've personally been a fan of this year that you think is a great example?
Well, I mean, that's hard because that means I have to put somebody on the spot. So I will mention again the campaign that I mentioned briefly just now about Abercrombie and Fitch and the partnership that we have with them and did in 2021 for Pride, which is really great because it went beyond just messaging, but we worked alongside them to create a gender inclusive collection of clothes that were, really centered around pridefulness, around being your authentic self. And I think that is really a big exemplar of where brands should be going. And it's not only about the messaging, but it's also about what you're doing, internally and as a brand, whether it's through product or services that, helps move the needle for affirming LGBTQ people as well. I think that's really important.
Yeah, and just to offer my personal favorite, I think the Uber Eats commercial with Lil Nas X we mentioned earlier and Elton John, where they just whole funny, hilarious, authentic selves. Like that's such a huge moment. Like, because I definitely think I'm a big believer that inclusive messaging is just as important as an inclusive media plan. And the fact that I see that commercial on the Today Show, on, Jimmy Fallon, on everything, like not just in queer spaces, I think is just as important as the messaging itself.
Yeah.
So,
because it's not only queer people, it's not only queer people that need to see that visibility, it's everyone.
That's right.
Yeah,
absolutely. Visibility with progress.
I do love that commercial. I do love that commercial, by the way. So I agree with you there.
Same. Well, hey, you got to be an Abercrombie model this year, so that's pretty cool as well.
A model might be pushing it. But,
ambassador, whatever. Yeah. Awesome. Well, Josh, I can't thank you enough for kicking things off. This has been a fantastic discussion and a great way to set a high bar for the rest of today's live cast. So thank you, Josh, for joining us, and thank you everyone for helping us kick things off today.